Aliza Licht, welcome to Jewish Money Matters. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so excited, Aliza. You're such a queen. I'm such a big fan. I
Thank
I
you.
look at your work and I say, oh my gosh, she is definitely the career mentor that we all need. And most certainly the one I needed when I started my career. I'm so glad I found you. Your content is stellar. And then you have your work in Jewish advocacy, which is really how I found you. Oh my gosh. All in all, I'm like, can I be like Aliza when I grow up?
Oh, well, that's very kind. Thank you.
So, welcome to the show. I'm excited to talk all things branding and help the audience make more money by being on brand. On brand
Yes.
is the title of your new book. I am loving it. On brand,
Thank you.
shaping your narrative, share your vision, shift their perception. And this is actually your second book, Aliza, right? Your first book was Leave Your Mark, and you have a
Yes.
podcast with the same name, Leave Your Mark, Freshly Brewed Career Advice with Aliza Licht. So I'd love to start with, I guess, how you got into this line of work, because I mean, I'm guessing we're around the same age, and going
No,
back to how we started.
you're way younger. You're
Oh,
way
I
younger.
don't know. We'll talk
Yeah.
about that privately. But
Yes.
look, when career advice, I mean career mentorship. I remember walking into these career counselors' offices and being like more confused than when I left. What was their job? I have no idea. But definitely there was no career path that said you should go mentor women and go show them how to leave a mark in the world unapologetically and teach them how to go best about doing this. And yet here you are. This is your career. This is the career path that you followed. Obviously you care deeply about this topic, about leaving a mark in the world, about being intentional about doing that. How did it come about? Where did it come from?
Oh my God, such great questions. So first and foremost, professionally, I come from the fashion industry and spent most of my career in corporate PR, working for Donna Karan. And in 2009, I started what is now considered one of the first fashion social media personalities, called DKNY PR Girl. And why that's so relevant today still is because that was sort of the fire starter for everything. So it's actually considered one of the first examples of a fashion influencer in the
Hmm.
space. I was anonymous. This is a character that I played anonymously in addition to my day job as SVP of Global Communications. And I tweeted like 100 times a day. And I was approached to write a book in 2013.
Mm-hmm.
And because of my online presence, and I had a blog also, DQ on Tumblr. And when I spoke to this editor who called me cold and offered me a book deal, which doesn't happen, I was like, well, I mean, what am I going to write about? And she's like, well, you can have carte blanche. And I was like, so I
Are
can
you
write about,
serious?
yes, literally, this is what happened. And I was like, I can write anything. Well, people on Twitter ask me all day long, how do I break into fashion? I need career advice, because I was tweeting a lot about being a publicist, which I was. So I was
Uh-huh.
like, well, I want to write a career advice book. So Leave Your Mark
Mm-hmm.
to me is like The Devil Wears Prada meets career advice. It's like
Mm-hmm.
how work works, but it's of a certain age in terms of a mentality of work ethic. And of course, all the juicy behind the scenes fashion stories. But that is really how I got into this sort of career advice space.
Mm-hmm.
So it really started from there.
So wait, so this is after the Aliza Licht behind the character she created was revealed?
So I was revealed as the personality in 2011,
Okay.
and then in 2013 I got the book deal.
Okay. So at this point, you've come to care about this deeply, and this is how you start. You write the book because you've. It's almost like there's this natural thing that you had in you to just help women,
Yeah.
right?
Well, it because I was doing it, offline too. Like I
Right.
was always mentoring my team. I was mentored by people. So it's definitely giving out advice is always something I've done, whether it's been, before social media too. So yes,
Right.
it's natural inclination to do that. I'm always, it's just my nature.
Yeah, yeah. And that's one thing that I saw here as I'm reading your book and learning more about you and even hearing you now. One thing that comes to mind is that in a way, it's such a Jewish thing, this idea of like helping people maximize their potential. Like, I feel like if we boil it down to its essence, Judaism is all about, the call to action is help, like every individual in the world, regardless of creed, is go be a light in the world, go make an impact, go make a difference, use your talents and your capabilities that you've been gifted with to go leave a positive mark, which is exactly what you help people do.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And I think that's also why we triumph over thousands of years of persecution, right? Because we're constantly looking for that light and helping each other find that light.
Yes, so true. So, so true. We're looking for that light and we're helping others find that light and shine it brightly in the world. Such a good point. Now, when it comes to women, Aliza, we're complex creatures. You and I talk to women a lot, and I'm sure you come across this, but I see it a lot in women who want to start a business or they want to pivot in their career, especially once they want to start getting a little bit more entrepreneurial. There's this wave of resistance that comes up, right? There's this fear to put a stake on the ground and own their voice and their message, their
Mhm.
perspective, their know-how, like, and then of course, sell it, forget about it. We'll talk about the money piece in a second. But why is there so much resistance to leaving our mark? And what can you tell us to help the women in the audience who are struggling with this, help them get past that?
It's fear based. It's
Mm-hmm.
the good old fashioned imposter syndrome that women just suffer from and men seem to not.
Yeah.
I like to think of it in terms of two post-it notes, truly two post-it notes.
Okay.
So everyone who's listening to this episode can grab their post-its,
All right, I'm grabbing.
grab your post-its, see what colors you got.
Okay, let's hear.
Okay, so the first post-it, you're just going to write, why not me? Question mark.
Ah,
And this is a question you can ask yourself when you start to have those doubts. So, in my case, when I was thinking about starting the Leave Your Mark podcast, I met with tons of producers and they all said no. They all said they were looking for like really like celebrity level people who had really big audiences. So, everyone said no.
wait,
And
you'd already written a book about it.
a very like highly successful book.
I know. What in the world?
I know. So yeah, they
Okay.
said no.
Okay.
So I was bummed and I came home and I had that moment of like, well, why not me? Like what, who are they to tell me that I can't do that?
Exactly.
And once you ask yourself that question, you'll find like the answer is like it can be you. So that's
Mhm.
really important to keep top of mind. The second post-it note is if you're in the room, you belong there. So
Oh,
a lot of women, sometimes you'll have someone who's maybe a manager of yours or a little bit ahead of you, or even like a mentor type person who will, recognize something in you and bring opportunities to you. Maybe they'll invite you to a meeting that you wouldn't normally be in, or maybe you're invited to speak at a conference that, typically you wouldn't think that you would be considered. So it's this idea of someone seeing in you something that you don't see in yourself. So if that has happened, meaning you're in the room, you don't have to waste time thinking like, am I the most experienced person? Like, should I be this person who's doing this thing? Like that person is much better at speaking than I am. And you sort of put all of that doubt to the side and you say, okay, you know what? Now that I'm in this room, I'm grateful I'm in this room. I'm not going to question the why.
right.
I'm going to say, what am I going to do now that I'm here?
Right.
What impression am I going to leave? So I think when you start to focus on the present and the future versus what happened in the past to get you there and downing your abilities, you start to realize there's a lot of opportunity, and also that will make you not waste the opportunity, because sometimes
Mhm.
we get so consumed with the self-doubt, we actually don't focus enough on, okay, like what's the impression you're making right now? Like, are you being silent because you don't think you're worthy? Well, that's not good. Like
Right.
you need to be actually contributing if you're in that room.
Right.
Those are the two post-its that I think.
I love them. I love them. They kind of remind me. I always tell people, and I don't think I learned, I didn't come up with this for sure. I want to say I learned it from Kathy Heller way back when she was on the show one
I
time.
love
I
Kathy.
know we all love Kathy. So she said to me one time on the interview, I think there's two lies that we often have internalized. It's who am I to do that? And of course, the answer to that is who are you not to do that, right? Like who gives
Right,
you the permission not to do what
right.
you've been charged to do in the world, right? And I could never make money doing that second lie, which, excuse me, there's infinite ways to make money, and just go show up and do the best you can, and God will send the money, right? So it kind of reminds me of that. Now, I want to highlight for the audience two things that you said, because with this opportunity of launching your podcast, there was a no. There was a no.
Many knows.
Okay, many no's, right? I was like, no, we're not interested. And yet you said, no, I'm going to show up for this. And then there's a person who's hearing another part of your story, whereas like suddenly the opportunity came to write a book, right? I wasn't looking for it. It just showed up. And
Mhm.
the reason I want to highlight these two is because they're both things can be true, and yet you still have to show up, meaning to say very often I feel like people are just kind of passively waiting to be recognized, like the first story you told us, like, well, if they call me for the interview, well, if they call me for the book. And it's like, no, sweetheart, you have to show up. So help us reconcile that and clarify it for people.
Well, I think it depends on the type of person you are. Like if you're this big strategic planner, so you might ask somebody on this show, like, what was your 3-year plan? What was your 5-year plan? I've never been good at that.
Neither
I
have I.
I'm really actually quite bad at it. So and because I'm so bad at it, I don't even attempt to do it.
Okay.
So I have always operated and I've always advised people who are like that to think of goal setting in really small, digestible bites.
Yes.
So, what's the goal today? Like, literally, what's the goal today? I can't project out into the future. So, it was never a goal of mine to write a book. Like, it was not
Mm,
on my radar. But this is really why you have to continuously put things into the world, because probably my subconscious was doing this online mentorship on Twitter back in the day as DQI PR girl,
right.
because it brought me joy to give out the advice. And I was putting it out, putting it out, putting it out without ever thinking in terms of, well, what am I getting in return of this? So it's really this like gracious effort to be of service. And I think when you adopt that mentality in whatever industry you're in, this idea that like you can, with your own superpowers, you can help somebody else and not expect anything in return, that is when the world sort of gives you abundance.
I
And
agree.
that's just always been what I've done, because I genuinely enjoy helping other people. So I've never done it in terms of like, oh, I want this to be, by the way, this is my side hustle. This is not what I do for business at all. Like I have
Mhm.
a business where I work on brand strategy. Like this has nothing to do with that. So I do it out of love in a way.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, so I think that, thinking about your why is really important too. But if you do have lofty goals, that's okay also, so
Right.
it's just I just didn't have those goals because I don't know, I don't think that way. I just sort of
Yeah.
go with my gut in terms of like what I feel passionate about, what I want to say without sort of this big agenda.
Yeah, I'm very, very similar. And I think that point of leading with service, I think it's you said that this part of what you do is really a side hustle, but really everything ties back to your business, right? At the end of the day, it's your authority, and everything is tied back to your business. I think leading with service without being so tied to the financial remuneration and allowing it that it's going to come, because by nature when we serve there is going to be a value exchange, and
Yeah.
use the perfect word. It's coming from a place of abundance rather than trying to, hold on tightly to what the
Yeah,
result's going to be.
absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. And now that we talked, it seems like we're both very creative and have a little bit of that more creative personality. I'm thinking of the other creatives in the room who might be listening and might be thinking, okay, fine, they're like that. I might be a little bit similar, but they both are doing something very specific. Me, on the other hand, I have a gazillion ideas. I can't really ever come up with what's the thing that I'm going to focus on clearly when it comes to my business, let alone my brand, right? Because I have so many passions. At least I use the word passion, but I have so many passions, right? And I'm scared of leaving some part of me out or excluding some people who could benefit from what I have to offer. There's like this fear of missing out, and people tend to like, Lisa, I don't know if you see it, but like sometimes like become very general, and it's almost like I don't know who you're talking to because you're talking to so many people at the same time. So how can you help us with this? Because I think this also leads into the whole branding situation.
Yeah, so it's a great point. In my book on brand, one of the first exercises that someone does is the Venn diagram to
Mm-hmm.
really visualize sort of where they want to sort of put their energies into, and what is the intersection point of all of these passions. How do they come together? And there always will be an overlap. And when you see the overlap in the Venn diagram, it becomes very clear, even though these things may seem detached and distant from each other, they do have points of connection, which
Mm-hmm.
help you in your mind understand sort of the macro. And then, of course, the next exercise is really developing your brand guardrails, right? So
Oh.
where do you want to lean in? Where do you have permission to lean in? And where should you sort of stay out of it? And that gives you the framework to understand how to show up in different mediums.
Okay, so Venn diagram first to identify where there's points of intersections on what you're good at and you're passionate about and how
Yes.
that can serve the world. And
Yes.
then decide where your guardrails are, meaning what things you are going to make public, what things are you going to lead with, correct?
Yes. And also, sort of, if we think in terms of social media today, like what are topics that you're not going to ever talk about? You're just going to
Mhm.
stay out of that discussion because it's not, quote, on brand for you, right?
Right.
What is on brand for you? In the book, I'm sure you saw Zibby Owens published On Being Jewish Now, which is an incredible anthology that I was honored to participate in. My essay in that book is being a Jewish activist wasn't on brand for me
Mm-hmm.
because it was not something that I ever did. But then it became on brand for me, and it becomes an and, not an or. But there's a conscious decision to add something into the repertoire, if you will. It's not
Mm-hmm.
random. It's like, you know what? No, I am going to stand up for this because of my core values and belief system.
Mm-hmm.
And then it becomes very on brand for you.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
just have to, so On Brand, the book, has workbook pages, as you know, throughout that is meant for you to sort of take this self reflective journey and figure it out for yourself, whether it's for you as a person or your business.
Right. So you touched upon a very important part of where I wanted this conversation to go, which was you said it was a conscious decision, your conscious decision to bring that part of you into your brand, the
Yeah.
Jewish activist part, let's call it. I want you to kind of walk us through that process of how you came to that decision, because you said it's conscious, but I almost feel like there was like something that activated that value that was always there, but it's like, okay, it was put in the back burner for a while, but now it needs to come to the fore, and it's going to make sense in some way. Let me show you also how it makes sense. So maybe decodify this whole process for us.
Sure. So I've always been someone who is confident being outspoken, but I always stuck to career advice, personal branding, fashion.
Right.
And in On Brand, I literally write like I am not political online, which is now a lie that I have in my book. Blatant lie. So really, what happened was the sort of fire starter was that first instance when Kanye had his anti-Semitic outburst.
Yes.
When that happened, I was really angry about it and felt like I should speak to it. I am the granddaughter of 4 Holocaust survivors, and I felt very responsible to address it. And because my background is in fashion and I've worked with a ton of celebrities, and I'm sort of, I know tons of agents and stylists. And I actually once interviewed to be Kanye's head of PR, not with Kanye, but with the recruiter, truly. I heard he didn't have a cell phone, and I'm like, I'm out. So I spoke up. And shortly thereafter, maybe a month or so after, I can't even remember, Jew Hatred DM'd me on Instagram, and it's an account that I've never spoken to before. And they said, we loved your video that you made about Kanye. Would you be willing to make another video on why it's important to stand up against anti-Semitism?
Mm-hmm.
And this is the moment where I thought to myself, sure, but it's not relevant right this second because nothing's happening. And it's not totally fitting into my brand at this very moment,
Mm-hmm.
which is embarrassing in a way because it should be important all the time. But that's the God's honest truth. I was like, yeah, but like super busy right now. I'm totally, when it makes sense, I would happily do it. And I felt like, sometimes you have those chats with yourself and you're like, okay, Aliza, that's so lame. Like, you should make a video. But then I was like, no, I don't want to stir the pot right now. Nothing's really happening. So I let it lie. And then October 7th happened, and I was in Vegas with my mom and my sister, literally gambling. And I get a
As
DM.
one does.
No, because like I'm not watching the news. I'm not on Instagram. Like, I'm literally busy. And I get a DM from Jew Hatred saying, Aliza, we're not sure if you're aware of what happened in Israel, but we would really love you to make a video about this. So of course I stop what I'm doing. I say to my mom and my sister, we have to go upstairs to the room right now. I need to see what's happening in Israel. And of course, turn on the news and am completely horrified. And right then I had that sort of brand guardrail thought, which is a mental filter, and what I recommend you to do in on brand, which is this my topic to speak on? Is this within my own brand guardrails? And then I said to myself, would my Holocaust survivor grandparents want me to not speak up because of followers or because of clients or because of potential book readers? I said, no, they would want me to speak up. So that then becomes the guiding force. Therefore, it becomes on brand because it's coming from a core belief system of always being proudly Jewish, but it not being sort of my topic. And then I made that video and it went viral pretty immediately. And as things progressed, I realized that because I am skilled at content creation, because I am also not scared to speak out, people actually need voices to share other people's words. Like, you may not be a content creator, but you can share somebody's voice who is. And I felt very responsible to take that on. And I did. And I stopped promoting my book and I stopped my podcast for 6 months doing just only journalism. Yeah. It was a big deal. It was a really big deal. It was right after my book came out too. So I was on book tour. Like, I just stopped everything.
Wow. So it was a very big deal from a business perspective. Kol hakavod. Good for you. That is really amazing.
Yeah. I mean, it was, but then you get the crazy hate, right? And the crazy backlash. And you have to be someone who's able to handle that because it's very, very, very severe. And I decided that I wasn't going to let it stop me.
Good for you. Good for you. And at the end of the day, probably the reward must have outweighed whatever the risks may have been at that point that one conjures, right? I'm sure.
I think the reward is just knowing that my grandparents would be proud.
Yeah. Knowing that you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, you do. And my dad too, who passed away 15 years ago, like, I just know that it felt so right. And then when 2024 came, I decided to make it an and, not an or.
Right.
So bringing back in sort of my podcast and some of my normal content, depending on the news cycle, sometimes there's more news than normal content, but that's okay, depending on what's needed.
Right, 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 right. And I guess also there's an element that often we forget in business, which is like the human side. At the end of the day, it's a personal brand. So we are human beings. So our value system on some level has to show, to come across, right?
Yeah.
And at this point in time, in historical time, it is very, very relevant that I show up on a, like who I am, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And there's also an element of, because I can, right? I can. So I have, God gave me the gift of being able to communicate.
Right.
I'm really comfortable on camera. I know how to create videos and edit and do all the things. So I'm using it for good.
Yes, absolutely. Now, going back to the first video when Andrew Hadrid approached you, was that video like sophisticated? Was it just like a plain talking head? Do you even remember?
Yeah, no, of course I remember. So all of my videos are completely off the cuff in real time. Like I don't do any content in advance ever. Never have.
I love you.
So it's really funny. I was wearing this like purple and white like toile print dress, like a little summer dress. And I was sitting on the floor in the hotel room with the sphere behind me, literally the sphere in Las Vegas.
Hmm.
And I took the tissue box from the bathroom and I propped up my phone, balancing it on the tissue box. It doesn't have like a light or anything. And I did it, just spoke to camera.
Wow, wow, wow. And I love everything that you produce. It's true. It feels so fresh. And you have the daily salad, which again, talking about fresh, right? It
Fresh
goes
ingredients.
fresh ingredients every day. It
Yeah.
goes out every night. And oh gosh, I love it. I want you to tell us one in a minute
Yeah.
what it is, but like then I see you fresh again in the morning, putting on your makeup with all of us, telling us your morning thoughts and looking gorgeous. And my question is, does Aliza ever sleep?
Thank you.
What's the secret?
I get that question a lot. I really don't. I probably sleep like 6 hours.
Uh-huh.
6 hours, but I don't need a ton of sleep.
Good.
Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, you look fresh and gorgeous in the morning.
Thank you. The daily salad. Okay, so really, for those who have not experienced the daily salad, and I wish it was every single day. Sometimes it cannot be, but it was my way because the news cycle is so frenetic and there's so much to consume.
Yeah.
Always posting all day in my stories, like important pieces of news. But the daily salad was my way of curating the most important bits. And I thought like, oh, a salad is a good sort of analogy for like mixing a lot of things together that maybe don't relate to each other. And how I found, everyone has their own style of like coming to this topic. And majority of the daily salad is about Jewish issues and what's happening in Israel. I find that it's very hard for people to consume this like very sad, heavy, dark news all the time.
Right.
So my approach was to find the pieces of news that I could be extremely snarky about, sarcastic, and very spicy.
Yes.
And deliver almost like a late night TV type of news. And that's what the daily salad is. And it is, by the way, the most fun for me to do.
Really, you love it.
I love it. I want it to be a real show somehow.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I know.
I would be so
maybe
up
someone who listens to this episode can figure that out for me.
Yes, we're calling on the audience for help. No, but seriously, content, you'd say you don't need a lot of sleep, but for everybody in the audience who's listening to us, content creation is a lot of work. I mean, it's beautiful work. It's wonderful work. We love it. We do it with love, but it takes a lot of time.
Yes.
And I wish I just started working with somebody in my team new just for Instagram. And I was telling her at the beginning, I'm so scared that you're going to be totally overwhelmed with the amount of content and ideas that come out of my brain every millisecond, not even going back to all the content that's there from 8 years of podcasting and talking to people, right? And I don't have enough time in my day to produce everything that I want to,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I get it. I get it. By
right?
the way, when's your birthday?
November. How about
Okay.
you?
Okay. June. I was
Oh,
wondering if you're a Gemini or not, but you're
no,
not.
I'm a Scorpio.
Okay. I'm a Gemini. I think it's interesting though to see, it's true. It's like, but it, you would do it all for free because it's a passion. Like
Yeah.
it's never, podcasting especially takes so long to
Yeah.
make profitable, and it's an investment. People don't realize it's an investment, but it is an investment, not just in time, but in money.
Yeah.
So, you have to love it.
You have to love it. Yeah, and it's a long game. It's worthwhile, but it's definitely a long-term strategy.
Yes.
It's not a
Yes.
quick thing to, monetize. But it can leverage whatever else you're offering. I mean, it can
Yeah.
amplify it tremendously. So it helps in that way. Let's talk about money because everything that we've kind of touched upon so far regarding being on brand and you talked about those exercises, the Venn diagram, really sticking to your guardrails, being intentional about those, um ultimately does affect our revenue, you could say our bottom line. My first question about money, Aliza, is again going back to the fear that we started with, especially when we're talking to women. We already mentioned, about showing up, or even, one of the posters you gave us was, if you're in the room, you belong. Don't question that. Just move forward.
Mhm.
When it comes to asking for the thing or putting a price tag on it, it's
Mhm.
it's even double the fear. It's almost like, no, 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 I'll just give you a discount right away. I'll give it for free. It's like, what is going on?
So true. So true. So I think this is a skill that must be honed.
Mm,
It only gets easier when you practice
you have to
saying
practice.
the numbers. And I, as you get older, I'm 50 now, as you get older, you realize that you have a level of expertise that has a price tag attached to it.
Yes.
And I really, and in on brand, I talk about this as far as like understanding your worth. And, the example I think in the book that I gave is like, are you Chanel or are you Zara? So if
Mm,
you're Chanel, you're not discounting yourself. Chanel
right.
does not go on sale, right?
Right.
So you're not discounting yourself. If you're Zara, that's okay, but you need to know that you're Zara. So my philosophy, especially I'm a consultant, like I consult with different brands and individuals on personal branding. My rate is my rate. I
Hmm.
have a rate that does not get discounted ever. What
Hmm.
gets sliced down is how much time I can give you. And so for example, if a brand calls me and they want to work with me, I always say like, okay, what is your, monthly budget in terms of what you want to spend on this particular project? And the answer is always like, oh, well, we don't know. But the reality is you do know how much money you have to solve this particular problem in your business.
Right.
So I always push back and I say, well, listen, tell me how many hours a week you think you need support. And then I'll say, like, my hourly rate is X. And they'll be like, oh, no, that's too expensive. And I'll be like, all right, well, if you're saying you need 4 hours, well, maybe I can get it done in 2 hours. So
Hmm.
you're never not paying me my rate. You just may not have me as often as you would like. And this
Right.
project may take longer to solve because we're like stretching it out, right? So you're doing less time up front. And that's a choice. So there's been brands in the past where they're like, listen, we can only have you 4 hours a week. It's like, okay, then I'm going to tell you how long it's going to take to get this done. And I know you want it done in 2 months, but it's going to take 4 months.
Right.
And if that doesn't work, then I'm probably not the right person for you. And that's okay.
Right, 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 right. And when I heard this, Zara versus, am I Zara, am I Chanel? I guess the idea is there could be a combo of both at on some way, right? I mean, I'm not discounting my rate, but I'm accommodating to a Zara type of, I guess, demand. I don't know.
So how I would look at that is from more of an added value perspective.
Right.
So the combination for me would be, okay, the time is going to be the time. Like I'm not going to change that rate, but maybe there is added value. So for example, maybe the brand can, I'm making this up, send an email out about my book to their database, which has a monetary value. It's not money in my pocket, but it is
Right.
valuable, right? So trying to see what that trade can be
Mhm.
is also really helpful. Actually, Alexandra Carter, who is in On Brand as my expert on negotiation, she has a book called Ask for More, which is fantastic, and I reference in On Brand. And it really is probably one of the best resources to actually become an expert negotiator.
Mhm.
And, if you have two willing parties, the budget is the budget, but maybe there's other ways to find value that you can both come up with that makes everyone feel good. So,
Right.
but the bottom line is you have to have the tough conversations, and they're not actually tough. They're just uncomfortable, and you just have to get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think getting uncomfortable, being uncomfortable is like key to life, to anything in life. That you always, I was just having a conversation with another guest that he was saying, like, if it's uncomfortable and it's objectively a good thing, but you're uncomfortable doing it, that's your sign that you should go there. And it's true because success is at the other side of that discomfort. And it's almost like our creator is telling us, I want you there. I know you can contribute there. It's not going to feel comfortable, but once you get to the other side, that's where you're going to, again, leave your mark. That's where you're going to shine brightly. It was uncomfortable for you to say, I'm going to speak openly about anti-Semitism and about this insanity that is to support terrorism. I mean, again, this shouldn't be a political thing, right? It's like a
Right.
human issue, not a
Totally.
political issue, right? It's going to be uncomfortable because I've never done it and it doesn't seem to align with the brand, but it aligns with me. And look how much success and how much good you've done because you went to that place of discomfort.
Yes. And like the famous saying goes, it always seems impossible till it's done.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. And I think something you said before about practicing is also important. We have to practice asking and continuing to ask. We have to practice it. And we
Mhm.
also have to talk more openly. And I think as women, probably we have to talk to each other more openly about what our rates are, how we
Yes.
charge, right? All of that.
100%. 100%.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
know, you have to have trusted people that you can have those conversations with, for sure.
Yes, 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 yes. You have to have women who, what do they say? Like, be the friend who, I don't, I'm blanking out. Like, talk, like, they're rooting for you when you're not in the room or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Totally.
yeah. Talking about that, Elisa, I'd love to ask about your family because it sounds like obviously they did something very right when it comes to raising a daughter that's super confident and comfortable in her skin, and
Mhm.
it's paid off. You've built a beautiful career and you're helping so many people. I'd love to hear a little bit more also about some of the maybe financial lessons that you learned from your home of origin and how they impacted you with in terms of the way you are with money in adulthood. Maybe there were lessons learned that you didn't want to, stick in adulthood, or maybe you did. What were some of the nice things or the not so nice things you learned?
No, I would say nice things. I mean, just work ethic. So my dad was a dentist. He had his own practice. Um, and I grew up in a household of people who were constantly helping other people and also constantly working hard.
Yeah.
I would say probably my dad worked too hard, but he was so dedicated to us. So my sister and I both are extremely hard workers,
Mm-hmm.
and we don't really complain about working too hard. And I think it could be our generation also in terms of that mentality. I don't think the younger generation has quite the same view on it. But, you know, my dad worked, my mom didn't work, but my dad worked really hard for all of us. And we enjoyed, like, we were not big savers in terms of like we would, you know, we were very privileged in terms of how we grew up. And if there was ever a time when maybe money, let's pretend, was tight, or my dad was stressed about money, I couldn't tell you when that was, because he would never have shown it, even if it was true. So there's a level of security when kids feel that their parents are not sort of downloading their problems onto the kids, which a lot of parents do. They do download those problems. We were very fortunate to not have that. He kept the problems, whatever problems there were, to himself.
Wow.
And allowed my sister and I to really feel very secure in how we grew up.
Wow. Wow. I'm so impressed. And, you know, as I hear you talk, I think about my own beginnings in choosing a career. And, you know, I don't know that my parents would have like been so like, yeah, go to Manhattan. And well, I guess you grew up in New York, did you?
Long Island.
Okay, so I moved to New York right after college, and I did the traditional thing that kids
Yes.
my age did, which was, guess what? Work in Wall Street, right? That's what we were doing. Although I would have loved to work in fashion. I was reading your book. I'm like, oh, that's what I would have loved to do, right? And my family would have never gone with that. But here's where I'm going with this. Aliza, financial failures or mistakes. I had my share of them, and now I think about like, I guess had I been in fashion, I probably would have been more of a spender than I was when I was in New York City in my 20s. Any failures, any lessons learned, any places you've been like, you know what, I'm not making that mistake again?
Well, yeah. I mean, so when I started in fashion at Marie Claire magazine in the late 90s, my salary was $23,000 a year. But I was living at home.
Okay,
So
that
in
works.
my mind, that was free money. That was like a lot of money.
Yes.
And it's not.
Mm-hmm.
We would be invited to all of these sample sales, like sample
Oh.
sales that you cannot imagine, like Chanel sample sale. Like, it
Yes,
doesn't
I
exist.
get it.
It
I
doesn't
get
exist.
it.
So you'd buy all of these accessories. I did accessories for Mary Claire. So I was invited to all these accessory sample sales. So I would buy all of these accessories at sample sales. And then you realize that, like, especially back then, like, okay, handbags and shoes don't actually pay your rent. So in that moment where I finally was like, I want to live in the city, I want to have an apartment, I was like, oh, wait, like, shopping maybe is not helping the situation, given that the salary is like $4.
Oh my
So
gosh.
that was a learning in terms of, like, you know, pulling back from the sample sales and actually understanding what it is to make a living and pay for your rent.
Oh my gosh. Did your parents give you a good financial education, by the way?
No,
No, yeah, mine either. I think it's a generational
I
thing.
think it's a generation thing. My parents, of course, like, were very supportive, and they helped me when I was like literally making $23,000. But no, it's a generational thing for sure.
Yeah. 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 Like I see the way how
Mhm.
open I am with my kids and how I show them and I teach them, and like that never happened. In fact, I remember being a young adult. I'd already left New York. I was living in Miami, and I remember my father one time like yelling at me like, "You need to make a budget." And I'm like, "What is a budget?" And well, nobody taught me what that is. So hello, like what do you expect from me? You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
totally. You know, I saw a TikTok the other day. I don't know who this person is, but it was really fascinating. So she has two teenage girls who are constantly asking her for this makeup or this bag or to go to this restaurant with their friends or whatever, all the expenditures that teenagers want. And she said to them, like, do you even understand how much money you're asking me to spend on your stuff? And they threw out a number, and she's like, not even close.
Right.
So we did the math, and let's pretend it came to $600 a month of just like random teenage stuff. She decided to give them the $600 and basically make them the CFOs of their life. So now they have this lump sum and they have to figure out what they want to spend on. And then they were never, she's like, don't come to me and ask me for anything. You have the money now. You figure out how you want to spend it. And I thought it was fascinating because like they're really learning, okay, do I really need that new Glossier lip gloss? Whatever. Like, I think that, I mean, it's too late for my kids, I think, but
Totally.
great, but good for her.
Yeah. No, it's totally. Yeah. It's totally. I do something similar with my kids and it's true. I mean, they're empowered. Look, it's real life. In real life, in adulthood, they're going to have to make choices and there's going to be trade-offs.
Yes.
I don't care how much money you have. There's always going to be trade-offs and what you choose. So beautiful. So Aliza, I like to coordinate all of my guests at the end of the show with what I call Jewish Money Matters, fill in the blanks. And this is the part of the show where I give you an open-ended statement and you finish it with the first thing that comes to mind. You're game for it?
Yes.
Amazing. Okay. When I give tzedakah, charity, well, loosely translated to charity, I like to give to.
Oh, right now, FIDF.
Oh, nice. Friends of the IDF. Beautiful. Very nice. Yes, people, very important.
There's multiple answers to that question, though. I mean, it's FIDF, it's the Lawfare Project.
What is the Lawfare Project? I'm not familiar.
Oh,
I need to know.
So Brooke Goldstein is the founder.
Okay.
Brooke Goldstein founded the Lawfare Project and End Jew Hatred, which is the grassroots activism part. The Lawfare Project provides pro bono legal support for violation of Jewish civil rights.
Oh my gosh. Yes. You know what? We need to get him on the show.
Yes, you should get Brooke on the show.
I totally am going to get on that. That is very important. Okay, amazing. All right, next one up is I'd love to make more money because
I'd like to buy a home or buy nice things. I mean, it's always to buy something. Let's be clear.
More Chanel bags.
Yeah. No. So funny. I'm not so into it anymore as far as accessories, but no, I think travel. Like to make more money so I can travel.
Yeah, it's funny. I think we mature in some level, right? I used to be so into the fashion stuff, and now it's more like, oh yeah, let's go on a trip.
I think the pandemic actually killed a lot of that for me in terms of, it just all of a sudden became like, well, why do I have all of these handbags? Like, where am I going?
Right.
Like, I just probably need one great one.
Yeah. It's also a bit of a lesson in life too. Like, where am I going? Like, where is this? Like, is it just all about the material indulgences? Evidently not. There's more important things, as you've shown us with your beautiful work that you're doing in advocacy and the like. Something I wish I'd learned about money growing up is.
I would say how to invest it. Like that's an area that is like, I do not do any of that. Thankfully my husband does, but I don't know anything about how to invest money.
I know it's such a big one though. It's so important.
It is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell your kids to start early. Like really.
They're good because my husband's all over that, but like
I think,
and it's a generational thing in terms of just that wasn't part of the education.
No. And by the way, it's not whether you were in PR or in fashion or whatever. I studied economics and I went into investment banking. We still had no idea, like literally had no idea.
Wild.
It's wild. It really is. And it's not unique to me. I have many friends who worked in the financial services industry. Same thing. It was a generational thing. And especially with women, I think maybe the guys got taught a little bit more. I don't know. Anyway, something I splurge on unapologetically is.
Something I splurge on. I'm like, I know this is going to sound crazy. I'm like pretty low maintenance. I know that sounds very weird. I'm not like, I guess every once in a while, it probably is a pair of shoes, like a pair of ridiculously priced shoes, but that's pretty much it.
Right. Okay. Nice. Yeah. Nice. Now here's one that might be completely different. Money, is it spiritual or physical? Is it both? What do you think?
I think it's both in terms of it's physical, but it's definitely also a mindset.
Oh, yes. Say, what do you mean by that?
I think how you feel about money is a
Mhm.
mindset. Like people who sort of you can if you could feel rich if you have an abundant mindset, right? Maybe you
Yeah.
don't even have the money in the bank, but you have that sort of very positive glass half full mentality where you're always looking for like the bright side of something. I think that is mentally rich.
Yeah, 100%. And it also kind of like when you have that mindset, I often see that it just allows it to come, allows for creativity. Like it allows you to come up with new ideas and new opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's something to strive for, to be in that place of contentment with what is and know that the possibilities are endless. Um, I guess I'm like that. And it might be the creative side or the optimist side of me. I'm not sure. But I like it. I'm keeping it.
Keep it.
I'm keeping it. All right. Today, I'm most grateful for.
My family.
Amazing. Amazing. Aliza Licht, thank you so much for everything you're doing. Again, the book is on brand. Everybody, fabulous book. Whether you're an entrepreneur or you're employed by, traditionally employed, this is important. We didn't touch on this topic, but, being intrapreneurial is very important. Just because you have an employer doesn't mean you don't have to think about your own personal brand, right, Aliza?
I couldn't have said it better myself.
And
Absolutely.
And this is the book to help you. Ladies and gentlemen, on brand, shape your narrative, share your vision, shift their perception. Where else can we find you and connect with you?
On all the socials, and my website is alizalicht.com. And thank you so much for this. I mean, you're an amazing host, and I really enjoyed our conversation. So thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having me on.
Thank you so much. And I hope we make it in person one day soon.
I would love that.